Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets and New York Knicks finally finished that trade for Mikal Bridges, putting together a package that on paper should help Brooklyn in a big way going forward, but also, yes, put the Knicks in a spot to win some basketball games. We break down the short and long-term future of it all coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marmbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms, they do apply. And Doug, terms apply. When you're making big moves, when you're trading big players and a lot of picks, finally, the Brooklyn Nets and New York Knicks get it all tied up here. Mikal Bridges over to New York, obviously, for a slew of picks and ultimately a few players coming back to Brooklyn.
Oh, our long national nightmare is over. They finally completed the trade.
Stand down, Nets Army.
We speculated on sort of like what would end up happening, and I think actually it's funny because we mentioned basically everyone available on the Knicks roster except for Shake Milton, and even looked at him and then just never brought him up on the podcast yesterday.
Yeah.
But regardless, the contract. I saw the trade go through. I was like,
tacit agreement between Doug and I to both know that it was there and actively choose not to bring it up.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, let's run it down real quick, and then we'll kind of get into the final. Just like final thoughts on this as we sort of move on into this new era of Nets basketball. But the trade is finalized. When it's all said and done, Knicks get Mikal Bridges, Keita Bates-Diop, we hardly need, and a 2026 Knicks second. Unclear about the protections on that one, although usually there aren't tons. And then the Nets get, and here's where you need to take a long breath, and we'll try to get it through it all. The Nets get Bojan Bogdanovic, Shake Milton, Mamadi Diakite. Then for picks, they get a 2025 Knicks first unprotected. They get a 2025 Bucks first protected 1 through 4. It was probably never going to land there anyway. So I would say that almost definitely conveys. 2027 Knicks first unprotected. 2028 Knicks first round pick swap. So we'll see where that ends up landing. 2029 Knicks first unprotected. 2031 Knicks first unprotected, going back to 2025 Knicks second round pick. And finally, when it's all said and done, Sean Marks' favorite, they get a $23.3 million trade exception, mostly because they just wrapped the Bojan contract into a previous trade exception and then opened up this full trade exception for this time. So when it's all said and done, they get a lot of first round picks. They get 5 first round picks, 4 of which are unprotected, a pick swap, and a second round pick, and a couple of players. So, I mean, high level, if you told me, I already, when I read the whole list to you, let me ask you this. When I read that whole list to you, what is like your first thought? And, I guess it's going to be couched a little bit because you and I talk Nets every single day, but like, what is your first thought when I finally take a breath after reading the entire list of stuff that the Nets got for Mikal Bridges?
Nice and clean, first and foremost, right? Like to keep these deals nice and clean. Don't want a lot of moving parts. Don't want a lot of extra salaries, sign and trades, and salaries that don't necessarily convey all the way through the full length of the contract. No, high level, it's a massive win for Brooklyn. And we'll talk about how this, I think, works for both teams, obviously, and the Knicks and their plans in the short term. But this is a massive add to the Kevin Durant trade package for the Brooklyn Nets when they send him to Phoenix. You end up with 10 first-round picks coming out of the Kevin Durant trade. You're still going to now have the ability to take on more bad contracts going forward after you get out underneath from Ben Simmons in this final year coming up. The Bogdanovic trade and that number can still convey into something else. They rarely use trade exceptions, and yet they go ahead and find a way to use one in this and create another one for themselves. As far as, and we've said this before, but as far as resetting a timeline, resetting a plan, and having a clear process going forward, Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets were able to do that in one, obviously massive trade with Mikal Bridges, but this is kind of the thing that we were asking for, is just pick a direction and do it with conviction. And this trade represents all of that to me, like all tied up into one neat package. Nets made a choice, and now you can move forward with a clear idea of what this franchise needs to do.
Yeah, I think this is basically a win-win. I think the Knicks get exactly what they want. Like, they get the guy they wanted that's friends with all the players. It's a really rare thing. So it's when it actually happens, like, kudos, maybe you pay a little extra. So Good on the Knicks for doing it. I think the Knicks, put themselves into championship contention range basically with it. They clearly have a pretty good handle on the cap. I do want to talk about that as we get later in the episode. So I think from a Knicks perspective, good job. I also think on the other side of this, the Nets, if they were going to do this full reset, right? I think there was a very few, they had to get the Houston picks back first, which is overall part of this deal, though we're not going to talk about it today, but just important to remember. Getting the Houston picks the picks back from Houston was part of it. The two things, one, they never were going to get this many picks back from any other team.
No.
Point stop. Like that, no matter where they traded. Now, there's another separate argument, which I'm going to bring up 1 second, but from a sheer number of picks, no team was going to unload this many for Mikal Bridges.
Right.
The built-in organizational piece that allowed the Knicks to go above and beyond with it, which is basically he's friends with all these guys. Great. That's great. That works out really well for the Nets. Two, the one little pushback we've heard a lot on the Mikal Bridges thing is, trading him to the Knicks. I personally don't care about that. Some people do. It doesn't matter to me if they could trade him. It doesn't matter if it's the Knicks or any other team. I know some people care about it. He was never going to get traded to a bad team. So the part where people come in and say, well, the picks are going to be bad. The picks are going to be like lower first round picks because the team is good. That was going to be the case no matter what team traded for Mikal Bridges. Like no bad team was coming in there to trade for Mikal Bridges and then tank. So like that part is a non-argument to me. What is important though to remember is that because the sheer number of picks was considerably more, I believe, than any other team ever would have given up, that means they go out further.
Yes. Yeah.
They go out further. You give yourself more chances as the Nets for the Knicks to be bad at some point.
Yep.
And that's the key part. I really think that gets lost with some people, like people that just like don't want to see that's not enough or gets traded to a bad team or a good team. That was always going to be the case. He was never getting traded to the Wizards. Okay. So just get that out of your head. Two, when you take these picks all the way out to 2028 and 2029 and 2031 on a team that's loaded to win now, that's a great bet. That's an amazing bet that the Nets just made. Even though right now, next year's pick is going to be a low first rounder. Okay, who cares? Like that wasn't the bones of the trade.
Yeah, getting to the place where 2031 could be included in this really matters. And whether or not, I agree. I think it works out for the Knicks. I think they're going to be high-level competitive. Whether or not I think that this ever ends up converting to them getting over top of Boston in the short term the next couple of seasons, maybe not. And the ages of all of their players as well. It's not hard to get to 29 and 30 and 31 and think, okay, that roster could look different for them. They could have to make choices. They may be trading away players to recoup draft assets and start a different version of their team. And that has to be optimistic for the Brooklyn Nets as well. Coming up here in a second, there is a key part to this trade in a second-round pick of all things that perks up my ears around how the Brooklyn Nets will approach the rebuild. We'll get into that, plus the current state of a very eclectic roster coming up here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. It's the winning formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle. You're going to level it up to peak performance. You got superchargers, you got roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Maybe it's speed, maybe it's power, maybe it's style. eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP. Bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the New York Knicks, the Brooklyn Nets, the big trade, the Mikal Bridges, and ultimately agreeing. I think this works out. You and I don't get caught up, as you mentioned, about trading to the New York Knicks. A player, it doesn't really matter. I'll be fascinated to watch from afar because I did talk with Gavin from Locked On Knicks. He brought me on just to have a discussion about, Mikal Bridges, the state of his game. Do we think that it's a step back this past year? And listen, again, I don't have any problem saying he's going to look a heck of a lot better on the New York Knicks than he looked for the Brooklyn Nets this last year. It's all going to be really good. And you can think about a lot of his defensive functionality. It's going to be better because you have some bigger players, some more defensive-minded players, some length, some size, all those things. I'll be fascinated to watch from afar to see how well it goes for the Knicks when it comes to playoff basketball. Because,
and by the way, real quick on that too,
yeah,
he's just going to probably want to play more too. And that's
of
not an
course,
excuse. Like I
no,
know we saw it kind of dip down. It's hard to play for a losing team. He was clearly disappointed last year. I'm not making any excuses for him. I get why Nets fans probably like were a little bit nonplussed around sort of like the attitude.
yeah,
Again, I don't care too much about that, but I get why people are. He's just going to be more energized just around who he's playing with.
yeah.
I think that, and by the way, that's just any human being would be. So I think that like that's a huge win for the Knicks as well.
Of course. So again, not that we're not a Knicks podcast, but I think it's going to work out well for them. The other part of this, though, coming over in this trade, didn't turn out to be Deuce McBride. It turned out to be adding Shake Milton, the one player that Doug and I had blinders for. The 2025 second round pick that was the Brooklyn Nets originally, that gets back to Brooklyn now in this trade. The one thing I'll say when we talk about looking forward and what it's going to mean for the Nets in the rebuild, we said there's always two ways you can go. You can use these assets for different things. Will the Nets make every first round pick they're going to have next year? When you add in another 2025 deep draft class pick that's probably going to be cautiously optimistic, top 35, you're going to take a roster that, as we talked about yesterday, has nothing but open holes on it and minutes to be filled, and potentially drop in 5 deep NBA draft class rookies in a year when you care about development and moving forward and making the next choices for your team. I do have a low level interest in the Nets saying our rebuild timeline, even though I still think it's another year away after that. But you're going to have maybe, if 3 out of those 5 guys hit, right, combined with still having Claxton and Thomas and having Noah Clowney coming on, you're going to look at this roster and have 8 to 10 guys under the age of 24 years old, all ready to develop and work. Like I found that to be a nice little add in here, and probably something that looks like a footnote relative to the players and making the money work. I actually thought that 2025 second round pick was pretty important in all of this.
I think it's important in the sense that where the Nets are right now, they need as many chances as possible to hit.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Like that's it. So as every pick you can get or very young player you can get that maybe is underperformed, like you just need as many chances as possible there. So every single pick they can get back, and that's where like the Cam Johnson DFS stuff, like they can get picks back for those guys.
Yep.
You need as many as possible because not everyone hits. So therefore, you just want to, you better. How do you win the lottery? You buy more tickets. Like
Right.
Sorry, the math works like that, but that's just the way it is. Like, but in the end, getting as many of these picks back as possible just gives them a chance to develop guys. Send guys to Long Island, have them play there, have 2 ways. I mean, a really funny thing is that if you Nets fans haven't been in tune with this, but if you cover the NBA. Like I do on a night-to-night basis when it comes to minutes, like wait till late season to some of the rosters you see from these teams. Like they want to have guys. It's like, OKC was one of these total disasters 2 years ago. Portland was the team last year where it's like, who's playing 40 minutes a night? Oh my goodness gracious. Or actually the best example, was Memphis. Memphis was the real one where it was like, oh my goodness. Like it's a new set of guys every single night. They're shuttling between 2 ways. They're keeping all this stuff down, 10-day contracts. I mean, it was just a total disaster. So Nets fans just kind of buckle up for stuff like that. But in order to do it, you just have to have the bodies to do it.
Yeah.
Like you have to have bodies that are going to come in, not really kind of know what they're doing. Everyone's going to be playing hard. So the product is like high energy, but it's also sort of like low basketball skill. So
yeah,
I think just getting picks like that is important. And like, again, just looking at the structure of this deal and sort of betting on it, and it's funny about the Nets. What I like about this deal, and it's kind of like the deal, it's not too dissimilar to some of these other ones like the SGA deal, or honestly, the original one with Harden to Houston, or some of these ones where they just have so many picks, is like, I'm betting at some point you'll be bad. Like you're not going to be bad the whole time, but I'm just betting at some point.
Yeah. If
we just give it 8 years or 7 years, do you think sometime in those 7 years you won't be that good?
Yeah.
Great, then we win. Then it's a win, right? And I think like that. I think looking at that from like an overall structure standpoint should make the Nets fans encouraged. You just really have to take a long view of this stuff more than anything else.
Especially when you still have a Dallas pick out there in the future, right? You're still looking at multiple teams, and that's kind of to your point. And not only the Knicks, okay, maybe you'll be bad by the time we get to 2031, but then Phoenix and then Dallas and all of these things that you look at, it's like it's just having lines out in the water. And if somebody's bad and we spike 1 year, maybe just improve something. And in the larger picture for the Brooklyn Nets, it also just means, well, maybe the pick particular pick spikes in value, and that means we can trade for something 2 and 3 years down the road here. Like, I sit here today and think the Brooklyn Nets make every single first round pick that they have for themselves from now until 2031? No, highly unlikely. Or if they are, it probably means something in between went wrong where they didn't feel like they could go get value by trading away one of those assets. And just on the second round pick too, I think we talked about this about moving up or not. Would you make every pick in the first round because Sean Marks is good at drafting, deep class? Okay, great. Like, let's take all those shots. This is where, well, maybe you can make a little margin move. The Nets also have a Miami second round pick in 25, 31 through 37 protected. Well, maybe those matter. Maybe you do get from 28 to 22 if there's certain players you like and not diminish the amount of guys that you can bring in. So ultimately, I just, gosh, I hate to frame it like this. This season is going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting. We're going to be doing a lot of college coverage. But yes, there is in the back of the old brainstem, a part of my mind that is salivating over getting to the 2025 draft class and just looking at all these players. And like, hey, that next season, and again, we're going to have amazing stuff to discuss all throughout this year, but that next season is going to be something special in terms of young talent and watching them develop and then really starting to dream on what this roster can shape into.
And I mean, and they don't have, or they have their own swap in 26 too. And like the 26, or they say, right, they have that, they got the 26 pick back too. Like that draft has like Boozer. There's a couple, like Arenas' kid is in it. Like there's some like
26 is not like not a 2024 class all over again. There's players in that class as of right now that project to be high prospects too.
Yeah, Trevor Ariza's kid is in it. Like there's some real dudes in that one too. And so it's like it was so critical for them to reset right around now. Cause like, you know, if they had tanked this year and it's like, yeah, you get Reed Shepherd. I'm just doing that because that's what Houston got. It's like nice. And maybe they're still along the same path, but to reset it around like at least one generational draft and maybe two is the timing couldn't have worked out perfectly. I mean, thank our lucky stars that Knicks just did so well in the playoffs. I'm being serious. Like, that those guys made like a real run, that Brunson was amazing, that, you know, that those guys were such key contributors. Hart and Dante were like such key contributors, and they had a podcast. I'm being dead serious. I know that people it sounds like copium or whatever. It's really not. Like the Nets never would have gotten this from any other team. I'm telling you right now, no other team, Utah, Memphis, these other teams just are not coming with the sheer number of picks. Again, around teams that might have also been trying if they traded Mikal. Like, thank goodness the Knicks made a run.
Well, and by the way, this is weird thing too, before we talk about the current Nets roster, which is obviously shaping up exactly how we all envision it.
Totally.
The Knicks and the injuries that they suffered in the playoffs, there's a weird value to that in them ending up making this trade, I think, because if you get to the Eastern Conference Finals, any team, and then you run into Boston, there's just this world where playing Boston is a bit of a gut punch. We're like, geez, we still got a long way to go. Now, maybe you still look at it and say, we're one Mikal Bridges away from having this be a different journey for us. We all get healthy. We go to the Eastern Conference Finals. We're going to the finals. That's how the Knicks are going to look at this. The other side of it is, Boston is still really good. And if you're not shooting for an elite number one star to add into the fold with Jalen Brunson, I think you needed it all to go that way. The podcast, the friendships, and also the optimism if you're the Knicks to say, well, if not for these injuries and we're adding Mikal, watch out, NBA, we're coming for the finals. But that can go a lot of different ways. So it's a long road between here and there, and the Knicks were willing to go deep to get Mikal Bridges, and obviously it works out. But I think for both sides, but for Brooklyn in a big way too.
Yeah.
Coming up here in a second, let's talk about the roster. It's obviously exactly how we thought it would look. Now we filled in, though. We got three key players here, Doug. So minutes are getting locked here quickly for Brooklyn. How does it shape up in the short term? What do we expect going forward? We'll get into that to close out today's Locked On Nets episode in just 1 second. All right, so as we conclude today's Locked On Nets episode, let's talk about the roster, Doug. We said there was going to be minutes to fill. We did this yesterday, too, just talking about, listen, someone's got to play on this roster at the end of the day, but getting in 3 more players, I think it's interesting. 2 of them, actually, Bogdanovich is what? He's in his 30s, if I have his age correct, and then 2 27-year-olds. So 35 for Bogdanovich. So they didn't, they're going with the guys that you don't anticipate having any real value outside of eating minutes here. Do you think that Bogdanovich holds value at any point for the Brooklyn Nets going forward to add in another piece of draft capital? I think that's the angle that I'm most concerned about here. Shake Milton, obviously, a name that once meant more, now 27 and just kind of floating around the league in a lot of ways. Bounced around 3 teams last year alone.
Nah, I don't really think he does. I think when once we see the guy, it kind of ends for guys. It kind of just ends,
Yeah,
and I think that he was out of the play. He was hurt last year. That he was basically out of the rotation even before that. Now sometimes you're not a Tibbs guy, and that can be a problem for you. So it's a
sure.
slightly different calculus when it comes to the Knicks to try to determine, hey, are you just not a Tibbs guy, or are you just not an NBA player? Because sometimes those two things are a bit different. I still say it's just 35 years old. It's just very rare to make it to this point and be a high quality contributing player on a team. So I think there's not much value. It was good salary fodder, and that's pretty much it. But when it comes to just the overall team, you still have a lot of question marks around who is even going to play? I guess we're going to talk about that. Is it even too early to even try to figure this out? We're headed into Summer League. The Nets Summer League team is going to be what it is. Right now, as it stands, the roster is, just make sure I have this right. It's Simmons, Cam Johnson, DFS, Schroeder, Cam Thomas, Day'Ron, Clowney, Whitehead, Jalen Wilson, Armstrong, who they got in the draft, Shake Milton, Diakite, and Bojan. Is that the roster, the functional roster? Did I miss anybody?
And you have Watford, who's been given the
Watford, who's been tendered who's given tendered a contract, but we're gonna see if he makes it through unrestricted free agency. And it's that's actually not totally clear to me if he's going to or not. Right? Yep. That's it. They're not. It doesn't look like Lonnie Walker's coming back. Doesn't look like Dennis Smith Jr. is coming back.
No.
That's the team right now, and it's I don't even want. It's hard to even make too many judgments here because two of those guys could be traded before anything even else happens, right? Because it does seem like there's really a market around at least Cam Johnson. So I just I just don't know. It's just we're in a really, really weird spot with our roster.
And let's just to in the just don't know category, Dennis Schroeder, Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Nicholas Claxton. That's and you and I would say Noah Clowney should obviously be starting. So Noah Clowney, your bench has Dorian Finney-Smith, Jalen Wilson, mentioned Bogdanovich, Day'Ron Sharpe, Ben Simmons. And that's your top 10. That's your starting unit and the first 5 off the bench for the Brooklyn Nets. I would be shocked if this still ends up being the roster going into the regular season. But this does represent what we've been saying and preparing fans for. Hey, just think about that one. Even with Cam Johnson still being on this team, even with Dorian Finney-Smith still being here, go ahead. Put your win totals down now. If you were a fan that's concerned about, boy, if Cam Johnson's on this team when this regular season starts, Dorian Finney-Smith, hey, it's not going to matter. This is not a roster. That is not a starting 5 that strikes fear into the hearts of the opposition. They can go out there and play their butts off and still lose more games than they're ever going to possibly win. So I think they're already in that right direction. Now it's just about whether or not, you mentioned a Shake Milton, Bogdanovich. If these trades happen with Johnson, with Dorian Finney-Smith, then we really get into the weeds about who are you inviting to Summer League? Are you going to get some more young bodies? Because otherwise, we're not far off from saying, I guess Shake Milton and Bogdanovich have at least some minute shares here going into this regular season, just from a numbers standpoint, because they don't have other guys to fill those needs, which isn't a bad thing. It's a reality.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, it's already the worst roster in basketball, easily. There's no other roster that's this bad. Every other team has 2-3 guys better than, wherever you want to put Cam Thomas, I'd still put this roster below, even the Wizards, Poole, Kuzma, Chewy,
come on. Yeah.
And whoever. I guess they traded Denny and Tyus Jones to come back. Wizards, I guess, are close, but it's still there. I would still put the Nets as worse. Every other team has a better, more functional NBA players than the Nets do. And so I'm really not worried about losing the games. I do think that a running theme of our season this year is going to be, I can already kind of see it happening. There's a certain subset of fans out there that don't totally get that losing is the prime goal. And it's going to be, wanting to round out the roster around functionality, or we need this. It's dude, they don't need anything. Now, the one case against that is you don't want it to have it be a total S show where it's just literally roll the balls out and we'll see what happens, because there's not a lot of growth that can happen for some of your young players when that's the case. So I don't I think the Grizzlies were a good example of last year having this roster, which was a total mess, but they adhered to like certain principles because Jenkins is such a good coach. And it still had like something of an air of professionalism, even though like you just didn't know who was playing on a day-to-day basis. I think that's an interesting needle to thread. It doesn't mean you have to have all veterans to do that, by the way. Like these guys were starting Scottie Pippen and Jordan Goodwin and guys like this on a nightly basis. It just means that like there has to be like good top-down leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I think the Wizards did not have this. Like the
Right.
Wizards were, it's pickup style, and we'll see like what low light Jordan Poole can get on a nightly basis. I mean, so there is a difference in sort of how you can approach it. I hope it's the sort of the Grizzlies approach.
Yeah, and there is something to that when you think about bringing back Nicholas Claxton. I mean, whatever some segment of the fan base thinks that he shouldn't be on this roster or isn't the complete player you need him to be, but he is an experienced NBA player, and we saw the sample size with him and Noah Clowney. Okay, so you can trust that you have that tandem to work and build around, and you're not going to have Nicholas Claxton decide I'm going to go ahead and Jordan Poole this game and take, it's going to be the Nicholas Claxton show. Everyone get out of my way. Likewise for Cam Thomas, having Dennis Schroeder. Now, will he still be here? Maybe, maybe not. But while he is here, he's a veteran point guard who understands what his role is. And if he is still here and buys into it, will you expect him to be doing the right thing, possession to possession, to help Cam Thomas get in good spots, continue to develop himself as well? So it's a good point that you bring up, though. Like, there are going to be players, even Jalen Wilson, to whatever extent, any young player, you want it to still be functional on a night-to-night basis where they get to develop properly. Because the last thing you want to turn around here and do, Cam Thomas is the prime example, is come out of this year and be like, well, Cam Thomas sure is a chucker, but we didn't learn anything more about where his game can grow to. And I would be shocked if that were the case for Brooklyn. It just doesn't seem like they're going to risk that at all this year.
And I think the coach is great.
Shots, by the way, but
I think the coach is great for this. Like by all accounts, working with Team Canada, what he did with the Kings, working with development, sort of understanding, he has a lot of respect. I think he's a good coach to have in a case like this. And to the point where I was actually wondering, I was like, I wonder if they kind of floated in some of these interviews that like they might go this direction. Like when they were talking, like, you know what I mean? And like just to have it forward facing around some of these other guys about being like, hey, just so you know,
right,
we're thinking about this. Right. And I do wonder if like that was part of the discussion and why guys like Bud and guys like Kevin Young just like weren't maybe that interested in having that be part of their resume. I'm not sure. That's just speculation. But overall, they will have to thread that needle of just like there's got to be some growth, all for the losses.
Yeah. Yep.
All for the losses. But there's got to be some growth. I mean, specifically around Cam. Like he's the one I could see devolving quickly if not given. Not his fault, but like if not given some structure around improving certain parts of his game, because he's like such a good shooter and just such a good scorer that like that would be an easy default mechanism. And so it's not anti him. It's just more like, let's see how this unfolds. But that's going to take some time to kind of like understand like what's really happening there.
Yeah, and I know we're going to have a conversation about Tariq Whitehead and where he stands in all of this, but even any one more player from Summer League, invites, camp invites, whatever it is, one more young player heading into the season that you can say, oh, let's see how he develops. That's all it takes, at least for me, and probably for a lot of Nets fans, to say, okay, here's 3-4 guys that I can watch and see how they progress over the course of the season. End of the day, though, Brooklyn obviously get back to the top. The massive trade completed with the New York Knicks. Very successful, I think, for both sides. And obviously, we have a high level of optimism about what Brooklyn can do going forward beyond the upcoming season.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Another week in the books.
Sorry, guys, I forgot. The first firework I saw on July 4th last night. Okay. So it's shot into the air, and it kind of looks like a light trail. And then there's this moment you think, anything else? But then it explodes, and it's this combination of colors and lights. It's a lot of fun. That's just the first one. I'll do more throughout the rest of the summer here.
Oh, dude, when you were describing it, I was just picturing it. I wish you'd send me videos. Like
you can see it. Yeah. Oh no, I got the video. I'll send them. Yeah.
I wish you could send me videos. It's not me, waving my fist at clouds either. I actually don't mind watching fireworks. I think it's dumb when other people post pictures of fireworks. That's mostly it. I want to be very, very clear.
I believe it.
It's like, let's just all enjoy our lives. Like, we don't need to see your fireworks too. They're not that interesting in person. We don't need to see them online. Okay, we're gonna get out of here. Much appreciate everyone that's jumped on here. Continue to see incredible numbers, both the pod side and YouTube side. So everyone's kind of into what the Nets are doing, and we're gonna be coming here 5 days a week. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well.
Some people say I have an attitude. Maybe I do. But I think you have to. You have to believe in yourself when no one else does. That makes you a winner right there. That is Vanus Williams.
Oh, one of the all-time great posts. We're back again next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.